Welcome to hashtag 52 Needs, and this week we're talking about structure. My name is Angela Heise. I'm an emotional intelligence and leadership trainer and coach, and I also dabble in cultural intelligence because my passion is also about helping people who are very different to understand each other. And I'm very privileged to have with me Julie Mason, who's a very good friend and mentor, who's also a brilliant sales improvement specialist and accountability coach, and she's best known as a LinkedIn strategy. Welcome, Julie.
Hi, how
Hello.
are you? It's so good to see you.
And you've come back from holidays
I
where
know.
we were just talking about it. We talked about structure and what structure doesn't look like, getting up in the morning whenever you want to, eating when you want to and all of that. And I said, but looking at your social media, your holiday looked like it actually did have structure.
It kind of did. It was definitely structured underneath opportunity for spontaneity. So yeah, it was really good. We had an idea of what we wanted to achieve. We didn't set absolute deadlines on it, but we achieved everything that we set out for, which was great.
Well, some structures are external, right? I mean, you were in a camper van, and when it drops down to 3 degrees, you probably need to get up at some point. The structure imposes itself on that, doesn't it?
Not really, actually. Camper vans have come a long way, and it did drop down to -3 degrees
Ooh.
while we were there. But thankfully, the structure of the van had an internal heating system, which I
Ooh,
could
okay. I
reach
take it all
from the
back.
bed and turn it on before we got up.
Wonderful. Okay, but you did have to turn it on in order to be able to get them. So there was a structure
It
imposed, an
was.
external structure.
Otherwise, your feet
Right.
would freeze.
Okay, so we have structures that are on the outside that we adhere to, and then there are also structures on the inside that we need in order to function. So I mean, I've got some ideas, but I would love to hear your viewpoint on that.
So years ago, I never thought of myself as a structured process, a process person. I called it processes back then, but processes are the structures that
Mm,
help us, do our job and to live, in a stable, continuous environment that keeps us at a nice Zen level,
mm,
essentially. And I never realized that I thought processes were a big scary thing, and I didn't know what they were. And I had a business coach. This is years ago, like 9 years ago, and he asked me, do you have processes? And I went, no, because I was scared of what this process thing was.
yeah.
And he said, well, show me how you do things. And so I showed him all of these processes or structures. And he said, Julie, that's a process. And I went, oh, so if that's a process, does that mean my little cleaning list that I have with my cleaning lady that tells her exactly what to do in every room of the house and what products to use and what cleaning equipment to use? He said, you seriously don't have that, do you? I said, actually, yes, I do.
So do I.
And he said, well, yes, that's a process. And I went, okay, well then, yes, I'm process,
Mm,
driven. So yeah. And now that whether you call it a process or a structure, and
yeah.
then to me, they're kind of one and the same. They meld beautifully, essentially, and they're very synergistic.
Mm,
When you've got structure to your life, when you've got structure to your work, it makes the living so much easier.
yeah.
Really, it does. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I'm one of those people. I like some freedom within my structure. I could not have every day to be exactly the same. That would drive me nuts. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a reason I've been working for myself for 25 years. I'm also somebody who doesn't like eating the same food all the time. Like
Yeah.
I know there are people who need they want that much structure that they can say Tuesday, oh yeah, Tuesday is curry day.
Yeah.
They know exactly when they do what and at which time. And some people need more structure than others. I need some loose structure.
I'm
I'm
kind
also
of in
the
your camp with that, I think. I like to have enough space for creativity to bloom for
Yeah,
me. Having it so rigid, and that's okay. Some people love that, and
exactly.
there's no judgment here to anyone listening whether that's right or wrong. It just is.
Yeah.
Um, and those people who love that really rigid structure that everything's planned and they've got their whole day, that works for them, and I'm really thrilled.
Mm.
I, like you, can't do that. I work in a creative environment where I need to think. And so for me, I need to have some looseness to
Yeah.
that. There are things that I need to get done every day. There are things that, need to happen in my business. And so for that, structures are really important,
Mm. Yeah.
keep
See,
you on track.
yes. So I like that my alarm goes off at the same time every morning. That's just, and that I have a morning routine that follows after that. But then after that, the day can go into all sorts of different directions. I look at my diary the night before, and then I plan the day accordingly. And sometimes that works better than on other days. Sometimes things happen and I go, oh well. But then it's
Yeah.
it's the ability to also go with the flow. But if I know that I've got certain, like, they're like checkpoints,
Mm.
like looking at, I'm the queen of lists. I
Yeah.
look at, and I move things that have to be done. They go at the top of the list. And it's not always that they get done immediately, but I make an effort.
Look, and that ties into accountability to some degree for
Mm,
me as an accountability coach. I'm really passionate about not only my clients, but myself. I have a series of things that I need to get done that week where I then check in with my accountability buddy to
yes.
ensure I stay on track. And the studies around that show that people who just think about their goals versus the people who write down their goals versus the people who write down their goals and share it with a
Mm,
friend versus people who write down their goals, share it with a friend, and then have accountability added to that.
mm-hmm,
There's a massive difference in
mm,
actual success rate. The people
absolutely.
who actually have an accountability partner or an accountability buddy, they are 76% more likely to achieve their listed,
Mm,
goals for that
yeah.
period, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
So for me, and I've always been a goal-driven person
Mm-hmm,
um, since I can remember, really.
mm,
So having then that segued probably about 10 years ago into having an accountability buddy. And I've got to say that structure, just that structure,
yeah.
particularly for us, Angela, and because I've encouraged you to have accountability buddies, which I know you've done over the time frame as well, and that
Yeah.
your structure to your accountability buddy system is, it makes me salivate with joy. I just go, oh, wow, show me that. That's awesome, right? Mine's a little bit looser than yours, but at the same time, without that, I wouldn't have achieved the things that I
Mm,
have done in that
yeah.
time frame. And I'm sure you'd agree
Oh,
that
totally.
structure of having that, and even our calls, our accountability calls, are structured calls.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not just catching up for a
Mm,
chat and wasting time. It is defined, breakdown of
mm-hmm.
what you need to cover in that time
Yep.
period.
And always the same time. There has to,
Yes,
like, something
again,
really
structure.
drastic has to happen. I mean, we have our calls every Monday morning, pretty much at the beginning of the day, and it sets me up for the week.
Absolutely, and mine is as well. Mine's at 8 o'clock on a
Mm,
Monday morning, and it again, that come 8 o'clock or whatever your time is, 7:30 or whatever it
yeah.
might be. Come that time in the morning, you've got to answer for what you said you would do. Now, there's no school mommy, mistress ready to smack you over the knuckles with a ruler
No.
if you don't do it. But it's that internal pressure that we put on
Yeah.
ourselves that we've gone, okay, I really want to achieve this. But a lot of solopreneurs, people who work on their own or who are in small business, for example, that really don't have anybody that they can talk to or answer to.
Mm,
So they might have a few staff that work for them, but their friends don't really get what it is that they do, and their family don't get it, and they can't really offload and talk to their staff because that, causes some issues in,
yeah.
the relationship dynamics. They need to have somebody to keep them
Absolutely.
accountable,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
accountability is a big structure in my life, and I use it not just for business, but there will be personal goals that I'll use it for. For
Mm,
example, if I want to, lose weight, then I will put that in my accountability goals. So, there's all
yeah.
different elements that you can use that for, but it's a
Absolutely.
structured process. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, again, I mean, as you just said, it's not just for work.
No.
It's good to have somebody you can sit with and saying, these are the things that I'm doing this week.
Yeah.
But it's the important thing for that is that you have got somebody who doesn't have a judgment around it.
Yes.
There's a difference between holding somebody accountable and blaming, or saying,
Finger wagging it,
oh, you didn't do that, because it's not a
exactly.
parent role. The structure is you are accountable to yourself. The person sits and says, well, that has been on the menu now for 4 weeks running.
Yeah.
Are you actually going to do this at some point?
That's usually when I start saying to them, what's your consequence going to be if you
Yeah.
don't do this? And what, so with accountability, a lot of accountability is in traditional terms of accountability, it's based on reward or punishment. And so, for example, years ago with one of my past accountability buddies, we had this goal that we both were achieving in work, and we aimed for the same goal. We could both achieve it. We both had the skill set to achieve it, and we were both part of a mastermind group at the time as well, as it happened. And so we set this goal for each other with a deadline. Your goals need to have a time frame for achieving them, whether they're personal or business. It doesn't matter. Having a time frame really sets your intention to achieve it.
Yeah.
And so we had this goal date to achieve it, and both of us missed out. Doesn't matter how much we missed out by. It could have been by, I think at the time our goal was to get a number of likes on our Facebook page, right? And whether we missed it by 1 like or 50 likes or 500 likes, it didn't matter. If you missed it by 1 like, you still missed your goal. And so we set a goal at the time, because there was the ice bucket challenge going around, that if we didn't achieve it, we would be christened with a bucket of ice water over the top of us. And there's video of us both getting doused with a bucket of ice water, which I have to say is quite bracing.
I can imagine.
Particularly in the middle of winter when we
No,
did it.
Oh, well, okay. Queensland winter is still not so bad, but
It's still
still.
not too bad.
Yeah.
It's not like South Island, New Zealand.
No,
But
but
anyway,
since we're talking about consequences, I mean,
Yeah.
the one thing that I always, and you and I both don't have children,
Yeah.
but the one thing that I know is children need structure.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult sometimes to impose structure on them, because you also want them to expand and grow and explore and all of that. So finding a happy medium is something that, I mean, I wouldn't dare to tell anybody how to raise their children.
No. Yeah.
But I think it's really important that to think about how much structure a child really needs, because if you over discipline a child, they become really scared of things. And I know that my parents were really good at disciplining. There was no, the consequence was always very obvious. Go to your room, you're grounded, you're this, you're that. And again, it's like, how do we bring structure in our life without it becoming punitive?
Look, that's a really good question. And it's actually something that I'm going through personally at the moment, but on a different end of the scale. So, as you said, I don't have children, but I now live with my elderly mother. And she would hate me saying that she's elderly. She keeps saying that she's young. But it's interesting because she's very displaced at the moment. She's moved up to live with me. And so she's separated from all her friend network, her regular routines, things like that. And so things that I'm looking at now is implementing structure, because she really loves structure in her life. And so making sure that we can implement structure, that she's not just sitting around the house all day, or that if she has X number of days at home, and I start to see her mood decline a little bit, then I ensure that I've got some structures there to get her out and about, or to stimulate her again in some way. And that's really important. So while it's not around the children, which also I totally agree with you, need that. Disciplined children are really great children, right? Children crave discipline. But when you've got an extended family, as we now live in here with my mum living with us, we also need structure. So
Mm.
she feels secure,
Yes.
that she knows what to expect in the week ahead. She knows, like, I remember one of the things that happened when she first moved up, and she kept asking me when I was going out at nighttime, where are you going? And when will you be back? And who are you seeing? And I felt like I was 16 again being interrogated. I'm like, oh, why do I have to tell you this? I'm a grown adult, And I riled up a little bit about it. And then I drove out one night and I remember having the epiphany that mum needs this for her security. It's not about me at all. It's about knowing what time she can expect me coming home, because she would be on her own in the house that night. That would give her the safety of knowing, okay, it's 10 o'clock, the garage door open, that must be Julie, it's fine, right? And so understanding those needs within that dynamic is really important as well. Yeah.
Well, I find that for example, when I run workshops, I always establish guidelines at the beginning, guidelines for behavior. And people go, oh God, that kind of structure.
Yeah.
And I say to people, look, if we don't agree on behaviors that are acceptable right at the beginning, we're not going to be able to hold each other accountable. Then and I'm going to be turning into mum, because I'm going to go, don't do this and don't do that, and this is not. But if we all agree that those are the guidelines that we all that we all abide by, then we can hold each other all accountable. But at best, we hold ourselves accountable.
Yes.
And
exactly.
then I don't have to stand there and go, well, we had an agreement that you were on time. You go into the corner because,
Yeah.
And it's, or we're not going to repeat what we have just talked about just because you're late.
Yes.
And you're saying, okay, well, what did we just talk about? That's just not a go. You show up late, we're not going to repeat this. You just have to hang in there if that's what it is. But again, it doesn't come from an authoritarian, we need the structure and we will abide by it, but it comes from, we're going to make sure that everybody gets the best outcome here.
When there's defined guidelines, people understand what's expected of them and can actually raise themselves to that level.
Absolutely.
And it becomes more harmonious. So, doing that is really important. While I didn't have necessarily behavior structures to my workshops, and I ran hundreds of workshops over the years, there was still an agenda that I would go through, so they knew what to expect. Otherwise, they're turning up into a room going, okay, I've invested in this and I'm now a little nervous, and it would settle everybody down because they would know that by morning tea, we're going to achieve this. By lunchtime, we're going to have this done. By afternoon tea, we get this done. And then by the close, you'll have this outcome and you're ready to go. And people then would go, great, I know what to expect, right? Yeah.
And again,
really important.
With no children, I mean, I've got some experience. I've got godsons. I've got, all sorts of children in my life. And I've obviously been around and have also been in the position where I was allowed to be the person of authority. I find that when children know the guidelines and when they know what's to expect, it's not like wait until mom comes home or dad comes home and we'll deal with it then. For a child, that's an eternity. They don't know how long that is. But if it's, if their expectations set, the time is set, there's structure around all of that, and the consequences are outlined, then children can deal with that much more, because it creates a lot of stress. I mean, I can only go my own personal experience, but when my mother said to me, wait until dad comes home,
the internal pressure.
Oh my God. There was no structure in that. It was just dread.
Yeah. But you and I both have dogs, right? You have a shared custody arrangement with Gracie, and I've got Miss Eva. And dogs are animals of any kind. They require structure. They usually expect to be fed at a certain time. They're used to that. They get into a routine of that. I remember when we used to have a Weimaraner, and you only had to walk her once at a particular time in the morning, and she would be sitting by your bed the next morning at that exact same time, ready for the next walk. And so that structure is in everything. We crave that, even as animals crave that. Our pets crave that. We do better with structure.
Totally. And we have structure everywhere you look. I mean, you have look at nature, seasons have structure. I mean, there's structure in wherever we look, but it's there. And again, it's finding the the structural
Mm.
medium or the structural framework or whatever you want to call it that works for you, I think is the important thing, rather than going, this is an externally imposed structure that I can't change when there is an opportunity to change it. I can't change
Yeah,
to
we've
winter.
got universal laws that are structures. We've got governing laws of
Yes.
our country, wherever we are, that are structures that we need to abide by. And if we don't, there's consequences, right? And then there are our own structures that we choose to follow. All of them help us to have a harmonious life
Exactly.
and keep us safe for the most part.
Yes. So, for the most part. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Julie. It's been a joy to talk with you. Thank you, everyone, for
Pleasure.
watching, and I'll see you next week.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Angela. Mwah.